Hello, awesome sixth graders. It's Mrs. Lee again. I want to go ahead and start this next head notes. Today we're going to, or tonight, this evening, we're going to be talking about dividing decimals. I'm going to show you with models, but just like I said about all the other models, you're kind of moving away from that in sixth grade, and then moving forward, you might need to identify a model here now and again, but you're really going to work the problems with the algorithm. Okay, so when we're looking at my dividing of decimals with models, what I have here is first I need to find my total. So my total that I have is 4 4800ths, and I want to group that into 4 groups. So I want to see how many I will have in my each group. Okay, so first that's model 4 4800ths. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's my whole 4, and I have 4800ths of the next grid. So I have 10, 20, 30, 40, and then 48. So there's my model of 4 4800ths, and I want to break it down into 4 groups. So how many will each group contain? So here's a group of 1, and then I can come over here, and if I know my multiplication facts, I know I'm going to take 12. So I'm going to take 2 from here, and it's not going to be perfect, so that's a group. And then I can make another group, and here, and come and take another group of 10 and 12. I'm just kind of making that look sort of right, so I can make another group here, and then I can make another group, and I could grab another, and this is 12. Let's just pretend that's all right, and then I know the last here in my 4th group. So in each group, I'm going to have 1, and this is going to be 12ths. Okay, so in each group, I can make 1 whole, and I can get 1200ths of my 4800ths in each group. That makes sense, because this is a group, this is a group, this is a group, and that's a group. Those are my 4 groups, and I have 4 groups over here, 4800ths, but in each group, I have 12ths. So 4 and 4800ths divided by 4, I am making 4 groups, and in each group I have 1 and 1200ths. Okay, so next one. Here we have 6 and 4200ths, and this time in each group I want to divide it by 2 and 1400ths. So I want to make groups of 2 and 1400ths, and I want to see how many of those groups I can make. Okay, so we'll start up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I need 4200ths because I have 6 and 4200ths. So we have 10, 20, 30, 40. I hope I'm counting those right. 1, 2, 3. I think so. And 4200ths. And again, these are math facts. Hopefully, you should know. So this time, I want to put in 2 and 1400ths in each of my groups. So here is 2, and I need 1400ths. So again, I'm going to try and do my best with this. So that would be a group of 2 and 1400ths. This would be another group, and then I would take another 1400ths, and then I would take another group of 2 and another group of 1400ths. So all together, I created 3 groups of 2 and 1400ths out of 6 and 4200ths. I hope I said that right. I'm going to say it again. So in all, the groups, I made 3 groups of 2 and 1400ths out of 6 and 4200ths. So I made 3 groups. And so here it says shade grids. We did separate the models into groups of 2 and 1400ths, which we did. And how many groups? 3. And did I have anything left over? No, I had nothing left over. Okay. The last one here, this one gets a little complicated, so just bear with me. But I promise once I show you the algorithm and you start using it, it's all going to make sense, okay? Now this time I have 4 and 5900ths, and I want to separate the models into groups of 1 and 700. So I want to see how many groups I can create out of 4 and 5900ths that each contain 1 and 700ths. So here we go. So we have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this time I have only 700ths. Sorry, so there's my 4, and I need 5,900. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and I just need all but 1. Okay, so right there, I've shaded them to represent 4 and 5,900s. And again, this time I want to put in each group, I want 1 and 700s, okay? So here's a group of 1, and I need 700. So I'm going to hopefully just take my 700 there, okay? Now I have another group of 1 and another group of 700 there, okay? And then I have another group of 1 and 700s, okay? And now I have another group of 1 and 700s, okay? So it's not the prettiest, but I'm going to erase this and redo that to show you this. Okay, so let's pretend these were, let's go ahead. These were all shaded for my 5,900s. And I took 7, and I could only make 3 groups, or 4 groups, because 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, 4 groups. So I had 4 groups here. Right here, there's my 4 groups, and then I have all of this left over. So how many groups? We made 1, 2, 3, 4, and I had 4 here, so I made 4 groups. Is there any remainder? Yes, this time there is a remainder because I can't make any other groups of 1 and 700ths of what is left over. So if I was to go back and count all these little individual boxes of my grid, I would see that I had 31 left over. So it looks a little strange, but I had to make groups of 1 and 700, which we did. And that's where we got the 4, and then I could not create any more whole groups and 700, so that will be my remainder. All right, so here's our second page of the notes. This time we're just going to use the algorithm, and when we're dividing by decimals, the main thing you have to remember that I cannot divide a decimal with a decimal. I mean, I can when we did the models, but when we're doing it with the algorithm, I cannot have a decimal in my divisor. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Okay, so here's the steps. So remember, when you go back and do division, and I know I taught it in 3rd grade, so we need to remember our words, okay, our vocabulary. Outside the box, this is my divisor. So my divisor goes here. Okay, this is my dividend or my total. This is how much I'm starting with. The divisor is the number of groups or the number I want in each group. And then my answer is the quotient. I don't know if it's all going to fit. Okay, it sort of does. Okay, so again, dividend is my total, how much I'm starting with. Divisor is the number of groups or the number I want in each group. And then the answer is always called my quotient. Okay, so here on my first problem, and it looks like, yeah, there's another one. I have 47 and 896 thousandths. That's my total. That's my dividend. And I want to divide it into groups of 3 and 6/10. So we're going to rewrite the problem. So my dividend or my total goes in the house or the box, okay? And my divisor, or the number of groups I want, or the number I want in each group, which is 3 and 6/10, goes outside, and I am looking for my quotient. I'm looking for the answer. Now, this is what I was talking about. When I have a decimal in my divisor, which I do right here, I cannot divide with decimal into my divisor. I need to be able to move that decimal over. The reason I can do that is because of just equivalent expressions. So I can take my 3 and 6/10, and technically what I'm doing is I'm taking my 3 and 6/10 and I am multiplying it by 10. And when I do that, it simply makes me move my decimal over one time. Okay? Well, if I did that to my divisor, I have to do the exact same thing to my dividend, and that multiply 47 and 896 thousandths by 10 in order to move my decimal one over, because you have to keep your expressions balanced. And so since I want to get rid of that decimal in my 3 and 6/10 by multiplying it by 10, I have to do the same thing to my dividend. Okay, so that's technically what we're doing. But just for the algorithm's sake, I know I need to move it one over, which would make me move this one over.
I brought us popcorn for today.
Okay, so since I moved my decimal in my divisor one spot by technically multiplying it by 10, I have to do the same thing to my dividend. So now I have 36 divided by 478 and 96 hundredths. Then all I have to do is bring my decimal straight up. And now you're going to do the exact same thing that you've been doing since 3rd grade, which is, I know the acronym here they're showing down here is a little different than what I taught in 3rd grade, but it's like, does McDonald's sell, and I bring here up here, does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers? But it basically means divide, multiply, subtract, and the cheese for me was to check. Okay, and that means check your after you subtract, you're checking your difference, and if it's larger than my divisor, that means that I did not make all the groups I could. Okay, but they're saying that it's compare, same thing. And then you bring down my next number in my dividend, and then you start all over again. And I know I added some of the letters sometimes and some not. Okay, so now we go back up to my problem, and that's what we're going to do. We have 36, and I want to see how many groups I can make of 36 out of 47. I know I can make one group, so that's my divide. Now I'm going to multiply. 1 times 36 is 36. I subtract, that'd be 1 and 1, and then I bring down my 8. So now I have 118. Again, I want to know how many groups of 36 I can make out of it. And you kind of estimate, and I know I can make about 3 groups. So 3 times 6 is 18. Regroup my 1. 3 times 3 is 9 plus 1, which would be 10. So I subtract again. So now I have 10. Now I bring down the 9. Okay, again, about how many groups? Well, we just did it, so I know it's going to be 3 again. Again, multiply it out, and I'm going to get 108. Okay, and I'm going to subtract and then bring down that last 6. Okay, I have to show it that I cannot make any groups of 36 out of 16, so therefore I'm going to have to show my 0. Okay, so I have to show that I cannot make a group of 36 out of 16. Now, I can keep going because if I add a 0, that is not changing the value of my 478 and 9600. So I bring that 0 down, and I won't make you go much further. So now I have 160, and I want to see how many groups of 36 I can make. I know I can make around 4 groups just based on the other information. So 4 times 6 is 24. Regroup the 2, that's 12, that's 14. I subtract, get 6, I get 1, and guess what? We're back up here at this. So even if I add another 0, I'm going to get 160, and I know it's going to be 4, and it's going to repeat on forever. So I can put a repeat bar over my 4 there, and I know that my answer would be 13 and 304 thousandths repeating. Okay, let's do one more. Okay, this time we're going to take, so I have 1 and 4 4/10, and I want to divide that into 6 and 456 thousandths. So again, my dividend is in that box in the house, and that's my total. And I want to know how many groups of 1 and 4/10 I can make out of 6 and 456 thousand. So again, I have a decimal in my divisor right here. I can't do it. It's a no-no. So I have to technically multiply it by 10 to move that over, which then I have to technically multiply my dividend by 10 as well, and that will make me move my decimal over. Immediately move it up, and then you know that's exactly where your decimal needs to go. So just like before, go ahead and divide like you've been dividing since 3rd grade. I have 64. How many groups of 14 can I make? And it's going to be around 4. So 4 times 4 is 16. Regroup my 1. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5. That was my multiply. Now I'm going to subtract. And I have 14 take away 6. And then my answer is 8. And then I bring down my 5. So now I have 85. And now, since I already have my decimal and my quotient, I don't have to really worry about it. So I'm just going to continue dividing. That's going to be around 6. 6 times 4 is 24. Regroup my 2. 6 times 1 is 6. Plus 2 is 8. Subtract. And then bring down that last 6. And I have 16 divided by 14, which would be 1. That's 14. I subtract. I can add a 0 because that's not going to change my value. Bring down the 0, and that would, again, just be 1 time. And 1 times 14 is 14. And then I subtract, which would be 6, and I'll just let you stop there. I won't make you go much further. All right. So again, the biggest biggie in dividing decimals is I cannot have a decimal in my divisor. So the number of times I need to move my decimal out of my divisor is the same amount of times I need to move my decimal in my dividend to make that expression equivalent. All right, I'll see you in class tomorrow. Have a good night.